This is the prefabricated Roman oven that I've been working on. I'm building it what might be described as coil technique, that is to say, without the aid of a potter's wheel. I'm pinching it up using coils of clay which I'm adding to it as I go along. If you watched the first part of this video, you'll have seen it quite quickly come to this point. We've got a ledge in there that's presumably supporting something, although we don't actually know what. That's the intention of this oven, is to test out how it was used, and Sally Granger is going to do that. She's going to give it a go at making this oven work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to carry on. I'm going to add more clay, and it has been suggested that maybe these ovens were slab built. Well, it's possible, yes, you could flatten out slabs and add them on and build up in that way. But there is already 12 kilos of clay in this oven. So a 12 kilo slab of clay, which, because this is a diameter of about 50 centimetres, you would have over a 1.5 metre long slab of clay to wind round there would be very difficult to manipulate. Whereas building in the way I do, which is coil building, you're adding clay to it as a coil, if you like, but you will see that it's not in that sort of traditional play school technique where you make a sausage of clay and you add it on top of the last sausage of clay, etc., etc. What I'm doing is I'm adding a very thick sausage of clay, quite a lot of material in one go, and that I'm adding on the inner edge. So I'm pinching it in just above where the ledge inside this oven is at the moment. I'm going to start to bring this in to a dome. It's around about a little bit shorter in height than it is in diameter, the original one, so or at least that's what it appears to be, because of course the original was fragmentary. That's sort of where I'm aiming at when I'm finished this piece. So there we go, I'm going to join those two together roughly, and you'll see that I've got a hugely thick collar of clay at the top there now. That I'm going to start to pinch upwards, and I do that simply by working round the pot and pinching that in. Now as I do that, I'm joining it quite firmly to the last piece. While the last work on this was done yesterday evening, it's had a chance to dry out a little bit, to stiffen up. It's not so dry that this clay won't simply join together by pressure. So what I'm doing is I'm squeezing those two very firmly together, and you'll get quite a long overlap between the two pieces. Now I've been pinching this clay in for a couple of minutes now, and you can see that the wall's starting to grow. The two pieces, the piece I've just added has started to weld together with the other one, but it's quite coarse. And what I'm going to start to do now is use my hand on the outside just to support, and on the inside I'm using my fingers to actually pull the clay upwards. Now, one of the features that is described in the original finds of this type of oven is what's described as finger wiping on the inside of the pot, which sort of sounds a little bit like a sort of gentle finishing technique where you sort of wipe your fingers over the surface of the clay, and that will sort of smooth out the clay. Well, yes, you can do that towards the end of the production, but actually at this stage I'm squeezing the clay between my hands on the outside, my hand on the inside, and pulling upwards, and I can pull quite a lot of material up the side of the vessel. And what it leaves you with on the inside is these sort of finger wipes, if you like, these finger stripes. Now I will come back later in the production and I will smooth that out a little bit, but I'll smooth it out by more or less doing the same thing a little bit more gently. And that starts to result in a fairly even thickness wall now. I can feel the thickness with the pressure of my fingers. I can feel that I'm building up a reasonable thickness, although at the moment it's maybe a little bit too vertical, the wall that I'm getting here, because I do want it to start to turn inwards. So in a second or two I'm just going to work round and just persuade it inwards a little bit, and in doing that start to give it some form, and then I'll use a flat piece of wood on the outside of the pot, of the oven, in order to smooth out the outer surface. And that can be done with fingers as well, but it helps sometimes to have a tool in your hand just to be able to form that a little bit better. Okay, there we go. I'm right the way around now with the finger wiping. And if I just go round and take hold of that clay and just gently push it together at the same time as pinching it, what I can do is I can start to alter the profile a little bit. I can start to get this top to start to close in. And I'll do that because as I add the next piece of clay, I'm likely to cause it to go outwards again a little bit. And I want to just try and make sure that I'm heading in the right direction for the final form that I want. Now, looking at the shards of the original, it's not a particularly even form. It's well formed. It's well made, but it's not so regular that you could possibly mistake it for wheel made or anything like that. So I'm not going to be too fussy in the finish, if you like, on this. The precise finish of the form. I'm going to get as close as I can, and we'll try that as a pot. So here we go, we're there. Now time to give it a little bit of scrape on the outside and then add some more clay. Now I said I was going to use a flat piece of wood. I've actually picked up a piece of horn here. I quite like horn scrapers as well. They fit the curve of your hand nicely, and they do allow you just to do a bit of nice smoothing. They also have a slight curve to them, which helps to enhance the pot. I suspect that Roman potters, and even going back to prehistoric potters, would have used horn tools. They're resilient. They're sort of plastic of their day, I suppose, in a way. Okay, we've straightened that up a bit now, so another coil of clay going in at the top. Again, big thick coil of clay, just roughly squeezed out, not rolled out, to be nice and neat. Just a big thick coil of clay being put in around the top edge and squeezed into place as I go. So that's now in around there. A bit more to join up. Again, once that's in place, starting to work upwards. This is really quite a gritty clay. The original clay had quite a lot of grit in it, but mostly quite fine in terms of hand-built pottery. So mostly around about 1 to 2 millimeters, from what the report suggests. Some larger pieces, so that's what we've got here. We've got most of the grit in here is in the sub 2 millimeter level, and some of it a little bit larger than that, but nothing too huge in there. It should give us a finished product that's reasonably resistant to thermal shock, because that's what it's going to get. It's an oven, it's going to get heated, it's going to get cooled. But even so, there's still some care will need to be taken in the firing of it. So again, pinching that into place, getting that sort of fixed in, and then I'll carry on working upwards just as I have already, upwards and inwards, to create the sort of bottle effect that we're looking for. So I've pinched that out quite a lot now and brought it up and drawn it up on the inside of my fingers, and I've ended up with this sort of rough section that you see over here. What I've now started to do is to use a scraper on the outside and my fingers on the inside again to smooth out the form, draw more clay upwards, but at the same time compress it to draw in the top. So you can see on this side I've already started to bring that into the curve of the dome, whereas this side's still quite raw. So I'm going to carry on doing that at the moment, and that just really involves me pulling clay up with this. So this is not just a scrape, this is actually a draw upwards with the clay, but also at the same time I'm working in sideways that way. That allows me to compress the neck of the pot a little bit, and you can see by the movement of the vessel that it's relatively thin. There's quite a lot of movement in the wall of this, so you have to be a little bit careful not to collapse the whole thing while doing this. But what we have got is a dome. So, and we know that a dome is a remarkably strong architectural feature. It's also an ideal form for a pot. Most vessels, most pots and things tend to be based on the egg or the cylinder because those are really strong forms. But here we've got, if you like, half an egg upside down, which gives you a dome. It gives you a very strong dome form. And again, here I am, I'm moving clay upwards, and that's pressing quite firmly to draw the clay upwards, and I can feel with my hand on the inside, I can feel the thickness of the wall, and then closing in a little bit to actually bring this neck in to where the slightly inverted neck is going to go. So you can see we're working around now. We've still got quite a lot of rough clay here. Carry on into that, working with it. Now I did toy with the idea of building part of this vessel upside down, working from about here and building that way, and then turning it over and finishing this way. That would be an option, and potters in Africa quite often start in the middle of their pots, if you like, on a circular board, and they'll work one direction, and then they'll turn it over to finish up to get the narrow, rounded base. Well, you can do that with this sort of vessel as well, but I actually, as you've seen, have opted for going all the way from the baseboard. It does require quite a large baseboard to work on, so that's one issue, that you would have to have access to either a large flat stone or a piece of wood to work on. That's the way it's a little bit tricky, because of course we've come round to a point at which I want to bring this final bulge into the middle, and it's going to try and push in this direction. So I need to be a little bit gentle with it and a little bit persuasive to get that to go inwards. And then finally what I'll do before I close it, before I put the little neck on, while I can still get my hand easily inside, I will work around and sort of refine the form, but as I say, not overly refine the form, because I don't think the original ones were. And that's partly because almost certainly in use, this bread oven would be hidden underneath an outer layer of turf or clay or anything really that would provide insulation, but more importantly thermal mass. So in other words, a storage area for heat, because ovens like this work by heating them from the inside and then letting that heat that's coming through the wall of the pot heat the body of the oven. Well, in this case, it's quite a thin wall, wouldn't retain much heat, so it must have something on the outside of it to retain that heat in order to make it work properly. Okay, so I'm going to carry on doing this for a while. I'm going to carry on bringing it in and refining the form a little bit, and then I'll add more clay for the neck. So, as you can see, the form is now fairly refined as it certainly needs to be. I'm now going to add a neck. That's what we were aiming at. The inner form there, the outer form shows the encasing with turf or whatever. So that's the form we've been looking at. So we've got this inverted rim at the top, that's where we're going to go now. Then of course we need an opening putting in the side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let it stiffen a little bit before I do that, simply because it will compromise the integrity of the dome once I cut into it. There could be, at this stage, since it's quite soft, a tendency for it to sag. So I'm actually going to cut that. I might mark it, but I won't cut it right through until I'm sure that the dome is dry enough in order to support itself. So, as I say, going to add that inverted rim at the top, and rather than adding a coil this time, I'm going to start off with a ball of clay, and what I'm going to do is effectively make a donut. So I'm working my thumb through there and then through the other side. I'm going to pinch that out a little bit. There we go. Pinched out to make a nice ring. This gives me a good even finish to the piece. And often when sort of hand building narrow neck forms and things, I will do this as the finish to those sort of forms. So we're getting somewhere near where we want to be with a neck. I'm just going to work around the bottom, pinch out a little flange that I can use to join the two together. Join together the main body of the pot and this ring. There we go. All the way around. It's always a question of just working quite evenly around pieces until you get to where you want to be. Hopefully we'll start to, I want it to be a little bit smaller. I want it to sit inside the main vessel. There we go. That should do it. Yeah. It's going in quite nicely. Lovely. There we go. Sneak it in. And then I can pinch that into there from the outside. Make sure that the two join together really well. Carry on pinching round. Just pushing the clay of the main vessel, the main pot, in towards the donut, and I've got a piece of that's going on the inside of that. That's then joining together there. It's getting quite a weighty thing now. There we go. I think we're up to about 20 kilos of clay, something like that, in there at the moment. Which is quite a fair weighty piece of pottery. And as I say, the real challenge is going to be moving it round to get it to the kiln. I'm just going to bring that out a little bit because we do want this as a sort of little inverted rim, so we'll start that off now. And of course then putting this ring in does add that final stability to the top of the dome that we want. Like the Pantheon in Rome, which has got an opening in the middle. It's a dome with an opening, no keystone, but the ring actually acts as the strength. There we go. Work that in. Having this on a bed of sand would have been quite a good idea. With hindsight, I probably should have put a board on the table so that I could have done that. So I didn't really want to sandpaper the entire surface of the table, so I haven't done that. But there we go. And that's where we're headed now. Again, I'll finish off with a scraper just to finish off the surface. Get something which is quite pleasing shape, I think. You'll be interested to see nice culinary delicacies come out of this. Okay, we'll leave that for now. As I come back to it, do a bit of finishing and the final cutting of the doorway, the opening, which is quite tall in the original. It comes quite a long way up the vessel. When we come to the final thing. There we go. So I've marked where the doorway, the opening, is going to go on this. I'm cutting well inside that line because what I want to do is create a rolled rim around this door as is shown in the original version and still have the same sort of space. So I'm just simply cutting that out. Now I suspect that this oven will need some sort of closure so that it can from at times be closed up. So I'm going to keep that slab of clay, which as you can see has the ledge, the flange on the inside of it. I'm going to keep that piece of clay and I'm going to use that to make a doorway closure for this opening. I'm now going to just start to bring this back a little bit. So I'm going to pinch that out, outwards from the inside, open this flange up. It's quite thick from what I see in the original sherds and in the image of the original piece, this rolled rim round here. And I think the original appeared to have had a second piece of clay put inside it as a sort of rolled core. So let's see if I can do the same thing here. Just opening back first. Get me some space. I've pinched that out a little bit, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use a bit of water behind the flange there, just to give me a little bit of stickiness in there. I'm just brushing that up to raise a little bit of sticky slip in there. Then what I'm going to do is take a roll of clay, thin roll of clay, and sort of add it into there. So I'm just going to squeeze that out a bit. There we go. What I can do now is push that into place right the way in round there. Give me some fattening to the edge of this. I'm sure that's it's intended to add strength, which it will do. There we go, right the way around. Door up. And then I'm going to carry on pinching that round there. Sort of roll it back over the core that I'm putting in. I'm sure there were quite a few different ways of doing this. It will give us quite a strong and final product, I think. See how that still fits, if that still fits in there, which it does. So if I give that a bit of a flange as well, then that could be used to close this if required. I don't know that such a thing has been found or that there's any evidence for such a thing, but it'll be interesting to use this and try it out and see if that is needed, if it can be used. pinch out this edge a little bit. But, I think I'll possibly leave that flange in place because it probably adds a little bit of strength to it. Started to do the job. Yeah. Okay, I'll refine that a little bit more. Make it so it can be closed and possibly put a handle onto it to hold. We'll see how that goes.